read the statement of necessity for this virtual meeting. Leah Barch.
Here. Did you say here? I'm sorry.
We cannot hear her. I do know that she is here.
I can hear her, Catherine.
I will circle back to you, Leah.
I
Jeff
can hear.
Cobble.
Jeff Cobble, present.
Ashley Flood.
I'm here.
I cannot hear you either, Ashley.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, it's saying, oh, okay. I think that was my issue. So
Can you
we're
hear
just
me
going
now?
to circle back to the start. Leah Barch.
Here.
Great. Jeff Cobble.
Present.
Ashley Flood.
Here.
Jennifer Hamblin.
Present.
Chad Lewis.
Here.
Linda Moss Mines.
Present.
Lori Cardoza Moore.
Present.
Stephen Powell.
Present.
Ray Smith.
Here.
Catherine Schultz.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 10 present.
Okay, great. Hello again, everybody. Hopefully all is well. It's been a few weeks since we've seen each other, but here we are back on the computer virtually. So thank you for making time in your schedule. And I know this is kind of a timely ask. So we have a pretty brief agenda to hit upon request of the letter that we received. Hopefully you had a moment to read the letter that we received as a committee.
Not to interrupt you, Catherine, but would you like me to read the statement of necessity for the virtual meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay. So pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 8-44-108B3, the Standards Recommendation Committee for Social Studies through the State Board of Education is holding a meeting via teleconference at 9 a.m. Central Time on September 28th, 2023. It was determined by the State Board of Education in conjunction with the Standards Recommendation Committee that a in-person meeting would not be able to be held due to members residing across the state of Tennessee. Therefore, this teleconference meeting is being held. Okay, you're all set.
Okay, Laurie.
I had sent a request earlier to request an approval of the agenda that we're going to be working with today. I did receive the email from Bill, and I do share his concerns, and I would like for this commission to consider those concerns, and I have some concerns as well. So that's why I sent the request. So I wanted to see if we could add to the agenda items for this meeting. And of course, using the same procedure the State Board of Education uses, they approve an agenda before they conduct it.
Okay, so the State Board of Ed, but it's in their policy. They do have a policy that they follow about. And so for the public meetings that we've had, whether they were in person or virtual, that was not our policy to adopt an agenda. So that was just not the procedure we followed up to this point. So that was the agenda that was shared out was just that of how we have followed up to this point. And this really was, I guess, to address the exception for the one topic that we received from the House Education Subcommittee. So that's where the agenda came from. Not necessarily, just since we don't have a policy, we don't necessarily have anything in writing or upon approval of the group that we had to pre-approve an agenda. Does anybody have any statement or thought on?
Well, there
On
isn't a
our-
policy, there isn't a policy in place that would deny us that opportunity to address these other issues in this open meeting. It's public, correct?
So are you making a motion to approve the agenda as is?
No. I'm making a motion that we add to the agenda.
I
the
think
item
what
that you had
Catherine,
mentioned.
I think what Ms. Schultz might be saying is, we don't need to, you as a committee don't need to change the agenda to bring up other topics because you haven't previously changed the agenda to bring up other topics of discussion. So therefore, you can move forward with the quote tentative agenda, the draft agenda. And then if other topics of discussion come up, individuals may make motions on those topics.
Okay, well then, I would like to make a motion at this time that we address the issues that Bill Carey brought up and submitted to us as a committee to consider. And I would also like to include my recommendations that we add as well, that were not included. One of the things that I have found in over a decade of reviewing textbooks and instructional materials is not just inaccurate information, but also information that has been omitted or facts of history that are relevant to the United States and our founding, especially with regards to this topic. And I think we need to make sure, we need to do everything we can because we've got a generation that is going to live with the results of our decision.
Okay, so as a body, as a committee, when we met in person in Nashville, we voted and approved to send the standards as we drafted them to the State Board of Education. So we voted and approved and adjourned our meeting. The exception is that we're meeting today upon the request of the House Education Committee to address this one topic. So I think where we're looking is that in order to address other topics outside of this request and the purpose of this meeting is that we would need a motion and a vote to basically open up conversation to address other topics. And that I guess would include any standard that we have worked on up to this point, because we voted and adjourned with a document intact.
Well, I will make that motion because bottom line is we voted on a document that we thought had information in it that we come to find out later has been omitted, like Betsy Ross and Christopher Columbus.
Okay,
and of
so
course, the Abraham Accords. So those are, I would be happy to make the motion that we vote to add to this agenda since we're here today.
I'll second that
Madam Chair,
emotion, if that's
So,
possible.
second that.
yeah, so the motion I believe that we have on the table is to reopen the standards document to discussion on any topic. So that was a first by Lori Cardoza-Moore, and I believe Leah Barch provided the second. Madam Chair, is that how you understand it?
yes, and I think Nathan was trying to give us some.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, it's always an interesting thing, right? When you're talking about we don't have a policy, put together for the standards recommendation committees. Yet, entities like the Education Recovery Innovation Commission, which statutorily were going to exist for 18 months, did go through the process of promulgating a policy like that. I think the standards recommendation committees, none of them have ever gone through that same process because it's not anticipated that they'll be in existence quite that length of time. To accomplish what I think what both of you are after is you'd have to do effectively what the motion was just made to reconsider the final approval of the standards. You do that, you can take up each of these issues and report them out in relatively quick order as far as that goes.
Great. So our expert has agreed that this is the correct process. So Madam Chair, would you like me to move forward with a roll call vote on the motion to reopen the standards to discussion beyond timeline designation?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Leah Barch,
Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
Yes.
Ashley Flood,
I think you're muted, Ashley.
My apologies. Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin,
Yes.
Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines,
Yes.
Lori Cardoza Moore,
Yes.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
Yes.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 ayes.
Okay, thank you. Could we address first the issue at hand that will deal with the letter that we received? So that would be the letter of I don't know, I'm going to call it the wrong thing. The letter that we received that was addressed to the Standards Review Committee that will ask us to reconsider time designation and the notations that are found in the document that we've worked on. It appears as if the notations in the title, if you all have had a chance to go back and look, hopefully you have, there are several of the standard itself, 6.01, is the only standard, right, where we have time designations labeled out. I think where we have more notations are in the module titles themselves. I've gone through and made a list where we see the letters BCE before common error. That's used 13 times in our document, and CE or common era is used 16 times. So I've made my own running list of all the places where those notations include that time designation. But I would be interested to hear if others have found other places where we would want to discuss time designation in relation to the letter we've received. Or if there's any discussion, period. I don't think there was any disagreement from when the email initially went out with the letter to take a look at the request that was before us. Is there any discussion or disagreement, or I can label for the group where I see BCE and then where I see CE?
Madam Chair, can I ask for a point of clarification? Not all of us have seen the letter. Could you possibly read the letter out loud so we'll all know exactly what the ask is?
I can do that for you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Committee members, it has come to the attention of the House Education Administration and Education Instruction Committees that the Board of Education Standards Recommendation Committee authorized using before Common Era BCE/Common Era CE notations. We understand that this notation will replace the traditional Gregorian before Christ BC and Anno Domini AD for all social studies courses taught in Tennessee. This choice is concerning because it will undoubtedly cause unnecessary confusion by altering a pre-existing, well-known, and functional system. Further, it seeks to rewrite the historical and cultural context through which the Gregorian calendar was created. Providing context allows students to understand factual events and relate to important historical figures. The Gregorian calendar has provided the most widely used, consistent measure of time for centuries. It has enabled historians to better construct timelines and record events accurately. By relabeling this system, the context in which the calendar was created is lost and the rationale is convoluted. The BC AD dating system is widely accepted worldwide. Altering this system creates a needless element of confusion for students. We respectfully request that the Standards Standards Review Committee hold a special call meeting to reconsider the recommendation for use of BCE, CE, and instead continue use of BC/AD system. Sincerely, Chairman Deborah Moody, Chairman Mike White, and Speaker Cameron Sexton. Representative William Lamberth, Representative Jeremy Faison, and Chairman Scott Sapicki, and Chairman Kirk Haston.
So, just a real quick point back to Brian, or Brian just said, we actually use both BCE and CE. We use both interchangeably, and we have since 2015. So in the 2015 standards, we started doing AD/CE, and we do BC/BCE, and that started, like I said, 2015. So we currently are already doing this. It's just, we're just using both instead of just one or the other. So I'm just making that point, take with it, do with it as you will.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I was getting ready to say this is
That was
actually
my
not a
question as well.
change. It's the way it's been for a few years. I feel strongly we should accommodate, whatever the General Assembly asks us to do. I'm concerned though that they're thinking it's a change rather than how it's currently been. And I also wonder if any kind of assessment has been done on the cost of making this change, because there's a number of assessment items that use both terminology on the state assessment. So I wonder how much it would cost to make those changes.
Madam Chair, if it's
I
helpful,
do have a question.
Nathan James.
I think we're probably going to have a little trouble with time lag and speaking. Nathan, will you speak? And then Ashley, I think that you were also trying to speak. But Nathan, do you have something from?
Yes, ma'am. I received the initial call from the majority leader on that, and he knows and they know that this wasn't done by this committee, that it was done by the previous iteration. So there's nobody up there that's distressed or upset with the work, with you all, or, as far as that goes. He opened up the conversation by saying, I know this was done in the 6 or 7 years ago, whenever it was done. So just so they understand that. So.
Okay, thank you. Ashley.
Brian brought up a point that it's just a question that I have, and something that I was the way that it is currently taught for the last several years. And these standards, to my understanding, don't go into effect for 3 more years. Is that accurate? And assessment items are written. So it will continue to be taught this way for the next 3 years, and it will continue to be assessed. Brian, you were saying that assessment items, like it will continue to appear on the state assessment?
Well, that's what I was seeking clarity on. Is I don't know, the process of editing items and so on and so forth.
I can clarify that process. So as long as the current standards are in effect, the assessment items will reflect the current standards. So that would be through the end of the 2025-26 academic year. Starting in
Right. Well,
2026.
What I was referring to was the 2026 carryover. They typically like to reuse the items that can be reused to avoid the expense of creating new ones. So I'm wondering about the cost of that. But that's really not the concern of this committee. It was sort of a private musing as a taxpayer.
Katie?
So I guess going back to Catherine's point earlier, is this only impacting that?
Ashley,
I believe
I'm hearing
Ashley's,
you. Having a hard time hearing Ashley.
I believe Ashley's question is, this change will not take effect on the standards or assessments until the 2026-27 school year. Otherwise, they will be taught as they are currently listed in the standards document through the end of the 2025-26 academic year.
Thank you. And just for clarity, Catherine, were you saying this is only impacting the headers of the modules? Or were there standards that we needed to look at?
I think that's for this body to discuss and determine. There is only one standard that currently, it includes both, right? It has both time designations, but in the headers of modules, it is only BCE or CE. We did not, we don't see a slash where it's BC/BCE in the headers. It will, right now, the time designation, for example, Foundations of Human Civilization, it gives a time period and then it says BCE. So I think that's kind of the purpose of this discussion, is to decide what change, if any, would we make as our recommendation to any place within the document that time designation appears. So I don't think that it might be in our best interest to look in smaller sections and not as an entire document with one fell swoop, just because there are different places. For example, it appears BCE in 6th grade in Standard 1. It appears in the notations of all of the module titles in 6th grade, in 3 of our ancient history elective titles in high school, and in 1 title of our Tennessee history elective. However, when you look at the CE common error, it will also appear as an example in a course title page description for ancient history, as well as in some notations of the title of modules and 6.01. So I guess either the discussion needs to be change, leave in specific places. That would probably be the motion that we need to entertain, if there is one.
Since we aimed to be consistent with our formatting when we met in person, would it be okay to vote on the headings in one fell swoop? That way, Catherine Johnson, would your team be able to make those updates and catch all of those changes as like a batch, as a group?
Yes, based on how you have been voting, you can make a motion to change any instance of BCE, CE in any title header or any course title or overview to BCAD, and we will be able to make that change with a overall approval for that.
Is there any reason why we can't just make the headers match the standards and include both?
No, there's no reason. If someone wants to make that motion, they may.
I mean, to me, that makes sense. I mean, why would you not include more information? You know, why would you not include more information? I mean, these kids might go to a university where they're going to see it one way as opposed to another. So to me, it makes sense to include all the information and not limit that, but that's my 2 cents.
Laurie had her hand up.
Yes, I would like to make the motion that we adhere to the recommendations of the representatives who represent the people of this state and go ahead and make that change as they have requested.
I will second.
So the motion made by Laurie Cardoza-Moore is to make the change that it would read, the document in any notation of time designation would read BC/AD, one or the other. And I think, was that Jennifer that?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
This is Jeff Cobble. I'll just
Can
mention.
we modify the motion to include?
I'm not sure. I could hear or see Jeff starting to speak.
Yes, sorry, folks. I'm just on the phone, so sorry about that. But I found their rationale pretty compelling. Actually, Lori makes a good point that, of course, they are the people's representatives. They're elected, and I think it's our duty to kind of follow the guidance. I think they have the authority, but I also find their rationale pretty compelling. So, for what it's worth, I want to be sure I'm understanding Lori's motion. I'm not trying to reword it, just trying to seek clarification, but is the substance of the motion and the second that we just strike the use of BCE and CE everywhere? Is that the concept?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody else was trying to speak, but I could not see or hear who that was.
By the way, we just got a notification that we have 5 minutes left in this meeting.
It will not end on us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, that was just for scheduling purposes. Thank you, Lori, for clarifying.
I also want to clarify, Ms. Moore, your motion was just applying to titles and headers, not the standard that has timeline designations. Is that correct?
No, everything. That's
Okay.
what, according to my reading of the letter from our representatives, they recommend everything for consistency.
Okay, we just asked, someone asked for clarification. So this would include standard 6.01. It would strike the BCE CE designation in that standard. And then all titles and headers with timeline designations, it would switch it from BCE CE to BCAD.
I would like to vote on standard 6.1 separately. I can support the motion where it's everywhere else in the document, but I do think it's important for our students to understand when they go out beyond the classroom and they see BCE and they see CE, I think it's important for them to know that it's equivalent, like that BC and BCE are indicating the same idea, and that AD and CE, just so they have an awareness and just so they have a foundational knowledge of knowing what it means. So I would like to vote on standard 6.1 separately in order to support the motion to change the time designation in the document.
Madam Chair,
Does that make
Ms.
sense?
Flood, your motion would be to divide the question. Your motion is to divide the question, and so since you have a motion on the floor, and Ms. Flood's moving to divide the question to deal with all of it except for that specific standard in one vote, and that specific standard in another vote. That needs to be seconded, and the majority of the members need to agree to divide the question. Then you would vote on the two portions separately.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from Laurie Cardozo-Moore with a second from Jennifer, and now we have an addition from Ashley. Is there a second to Ashley's request to separate the initial motion?
I'll second Chad Lewis.
Okay, so Chad, okay, and now we need to vote on the separation.
Whether
Okay.
to divide the question.
Okay, so vote we are going to take by roll call vote will be separating the motion to deal with two separate potential alterations. Catherine, thanks.
Leah Barch,
Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
No.
Ashley Flood,
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin,
No.
Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines,
Yes.
Lori Cardozo-Moore,
Nay.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
No.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 6 ayes.
Okay, so we will move forward with looking at this in a separated version. So back to the initial motion that was on the table of accepting a change to the notations in titles or in, as it was noted, the course title page from BCE to BC and from CE to AD. That is the motion we're now voting on unless there was any other discussion.
Madam Chair, I could offer just that, you know, in my discussions with them, I don't think there was, you know, there wasn't any sort of, you know, they weren't upset about the idea that people would have some idea that CE and BCE is a thing. It's just that generally they considered it, rather illegitimate. So you could probably accommodate both of those moves and still stay within the legislative intent, at least as I understood it in the conversations I had, if that helps at all.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So can someone, does Ashley, I'm assuming it does Ashley's motion that just passed, does that accomplish the goal of also explaining that they're the same? I mean, that as far as time is concerned, it's the same.
Right now, we are just discussing, we separated the original motion. Right now, we're discussing the first part, which is to change any what we call front matter, course titles, page titles, course overviews, anything that's not a standard, to read BC/AD instead of BCE/CE. So that's the motion that's on the table, and that is the motion that we are discussing currently. We will come back to discuss standard 6.01 after we finish their discussion and vote.
Any discussion or anything else?
May I
Clarify.
ask if Ms. Flood has actually spoken with anyone on the House committee?
For clarification, I'm not disagreeing with the letter. I am supporting the letter. Standard 6.1 is simply asking that kids recognize that BC and BCE are both time designations, and that they understanding what they mean. That's all that standard is asking kids to do, is recognize what it means. So I support the letter that we will use the time designations that the legislature is asking. I'm supporting that. I do think it's important. And to Nathan's point, I appreciate Nathan speaking. I think our kids need to know what something is if they happen to see it, if they see it in a news article, if they see it in literature. I hope that makes sense. That was why I wanted to divide the question.
Could I read that question? Could I read standard 6.01 in case you don't have it in front of you?
My only question is, right now, we are on the topic of course titles, overviews, etc. So maybe we want to keep discussion to that, and then we can come back and revisit standard 6.01 once we vote on titles, overviews, title pages. But yes, Lee, I do think that's an excellent idea once we get to that conversation.
Laurie, I think she has her hand up.
So should we motion to take?
Oh. Yes, I would only want to make an additional comment. I know we've had this discussion through several of our meetings. The teachers will teach this. So I just want to make, just for clarification, I'm sure, especially the high school teachers, are going to teach this to the kids.
Ashley?
So we're voting just on the front matter. Is that correct, Catherine?
That is correct.
Yes. Okay. Are we ready for a roll call vote, Catherine, to change front matter, title, description only? That is what we're voting on right now.
Okay. Leah Barch.
Yes.
Jeff Cobble.
Aye.
Ashley Flood.
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin.
Pass.
Chad Lewis.
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines.
Yes.
Lori Cardoza Moore.
Hey.
Stephen Powell.
Yes.
Ray Smith.
Yes.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 ayes on the motion. Oh, you have 10 ayes.
Okay, motion carries. So now we need to look at 6.01. Leah, could we come back to you, and will you read for us the standard as it is currently in existence in our standards?
Yes. 6.01 says identify the meaning of time designations and abbreviations used by historians, including BC/BCE, AD/CE, and circa decades, centuries.
Thank you. Discussion, I think the motion that we split is to change the standard 6.01 to read BC AD
Circa
and
eras,
circa
centuries.
centuries, which would remove BCE and CE. And we have a second. Is there a discussion on changing standard 6.01?
So just
I
for
just-
clarification, this is to remove BCE and CE from standard 6.01. That's the
That-
motion.
That is the motion and second as it stands currently.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say that regardless of like
And
personal
just to clarify,
belief,
the standard,
Leah, can you go Leah and then
yeah, go
Ashley?
ahead, Leah.
I think that there's power regardless of what you believe or what you stand for. There's power in knowing perspectives. And to withhold that perspective from someone, actually, even if they agree to a different thing and disagree with that, it gives you intellect and knowledge of how to handle a situation or how to talk about something. So just to have it doesn't mean that you agree or disagree with it. It's representing the language of the discipline.
Ashley?
I was just gonna say, again, the single standard is just identify. So it's just having the kid identify that they know what it is. And then the rest of the front matter, everything else in the document, all the time designations in the high school courses and everywhere else is going to be what we just voted on, the BC and the AD in respect to that letter. So again, the standard is simply giving kids the opportunity to know that if they see this designation anywhere else outside of the classroom, they have that skill and they know what it is.
This is Jeff Cobble, and my question is going to be, if the motion to remove BCE and CE fails, then is this the only place in the standards all the way K through 12 that this designation is going to appear in all of our standards?
Yes.
Yeah.
Due to the vote you just took, should this current motion fail, the standard 6.01 will be the only place in the entire standards document that CE and BCE is mentioned.
Thank you. I thought I understood that correctly, but I wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion? Catherine, can we move to a vote?
Yes. Leah Barch. Oh, and just to clarify, we are voting to strike BCE and CE from standard 6.01. Leah Barch?
So I just want to clarify that if we say no, that means we're saying keep it.
Correct.
If we say yes, that means we're saying remove it.
Correct.
All right, so no.
Jeff Cobble?
Aye.
Ashley Flood?
No.
Jennifer Hamblin?
Yes.
Chad Lewis?
No.
Linda Moss Mines?
No.
Lori Cardoza Moore?
Aye.
Stephen Powell?
No.
Ray Smith?
No.
Catherine Schultz?
No.
Madam Chair, you have 3 ayes and 7 noes.
Okay, so that motion fails. So as is, the standard will remain as is. I think we have addressed the letter that was sent to us in its entirety. Are there other topics that someone would like to bring to the group? Laurie.
Yes, I would like to, as a point of discussion, discuss the 4 points that Bill Carey had brought to our attention. I believe.
Bill Carey did not bring that. I did not receive that letter as similar to
Why?
the other letter.
Okay,
I
well,
don't think Mr. Cobble was on that email either that Bill sent.
okay. So I would be happy to read
Can
his
we motion-
recommendations for discussion.
Was someone requesting it to be read? Or Laurie, was that what you were volunteering to do?
That's correct.
Yes, please read for us. Thank you.
I'm going to read his whole email so the points that he's making are in context. He said, "Dear committee members, first of all, I'm very aware that when you replace a 247-page document with another 247-page document, that there is a lot to keep up with. That's why I say the committee has really done a great job. But since the committee is meeting tomorrow, and since I obviously won't be speaking, I would like to pass on 4 things I've noticed about the current proposal that might have slipped anyone's attention. Number 1, in the proposed 3rd grade standards, there's a standard about world explorers, proposed standard 3.04, that was moved from 4th grade that deleted Christopher Columbus. I don't think this was the intention of the committee. I would argue that Columbus was more important than Cartier. Also, just because Columbus Day is mentioned in 2nd grade does not mean 3rd grade teachers and textbook companies will include him in 3rd. There is no precedent for requiring teachers to know previous grade standards. There are 3 other points. Would you all like to discuss each point first before I move on to the second? Okay. So, Madam Chair, I present that first recommendation.
Okay, and is it fine? I am happy to forward the email to Mr. Cobble and Mr. Lewis so that you have it in front of you. Is that fine to do, Nathan?
Ashley shared it with me.
Okay, so you have it. So the question at hand, I guess, that is up for discussion is is there a motion to change what we have already voted on from August?
I will make a motion.
Can I share the notes that I took? Because we did discuss.
I think I heard a couple of voices. I think Ashley was saying
Can I
she
share
had
the notes? I just thought it might be helpful. For the record, we standard with the explorers. The conversation was with Columbus Day and how the standard is focusing on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find in the red line version where we are. Here we go. The Explorer standard was focusing on explorers that touch present day United States. And so that was the conversation around why, because Columbus obviously was not in North America. So that was just the conversation that we have previously had so that we can pick up where we left off with that conversation. I just thought that might be helpful to share what we had in our notes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and then there were a couple of glitches. So I think if I caught what you were saying correctly, was that when we discussed this earlier, that we did not include Christopher Columbus because he is in a previous grade, but that also he was in the context of the time period of this particular grade in this module. He was not in the area where other explorers were. Did I capture that, Ashley? Okay.
That seems to be
Just a quick note, Ashley, if you
when we
from
met in
Angie,
person. Yes.
if you turn off your video, that sometimes helps with audio delay issues. So
Is there any
okay, we will give that a shot.
Okay, other notes or thoughts or comments on this, Laurie?
I only want to point out that, as Bill stated, that Columbus Day is mentioned in 2nd grade.
So is there a motion to change standard 3.04?
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
How would that read, Jennifer, if you could state your motion?
So here's my dilemma, not being able to be involved in these discussions previously because I was out sick that week. If I had been aware that this had been what was voted on to put would not have voted. Now, understandably, that's on me, guys. You guys couldn't help that I was out sick, but I don't think we need to delete Christopher Columbus from this area. I think the concern that the House committee has is legit.
Okay, this, just for clarification though, this was not coming from the House committee. This is coming from Bill Carey, who is a private business.
Okay, I thought that
Historian.
came from, my apology.
And this is Linda Moss Mines. May I just make one comment? As a historian, if we're being true to the historical record, and we're talking about explorers on the North American continent, Columbus is not part of that historical record. So I have a problem with including him. There are certainly appropriate places, and we have done so to speak to Columbus, but he did not step foot on the North American continent, and to include him when we're talking about those explorers that did is to give students an incorrect picture. Just my opinion as a historian.
Can I ask a question? In reading Bill's note, he says the standard is about world explorers, yet we've defined it as North American. Can someone help?
Yes,
In the standard,
the
in the
context.
standard, it says early. That was my confusion. The standard does not say world explorers. It says early explorers of the Americas.
And the course is U.S. history. Third grade is a U.S. history course.
Thank you. Early explorers of the Americas includes Christopher Columbus.
Mhm.
Laurie has her.
But the
hand up.
course is US.
That's
history.
correct. It's about world explorers. And if it's about the Americas, the explorers of the Americas, then yes, it would include Columbus. It's not saying America, United States.
So Jennifer, can we come back to you?
It might be worth.
My motion would read to include Christopher Columbus in this area.
Second, Ray Smith.
So we have a motion to include Christopher Columbus in standard 3.04, and we have a second from Ray Lewis. Is there any further discussion?
In the proposed standards, so this would be added to it. Does somebody have the proposed standards of, because I don't have our suggested ones in front of me, or is that still in the drive? What
is-
would it be?
I have the suggest.
So would you read that and its number as well for us? What would it
Sure.
be if we added it?
In the recommended 3.04 currently suggested is identify the routes and contributions of early explorers to the Americas, including Jacques Cartier, Hernando de Soto, and Amerigo Vespucci. My assumption is we would add him at the end and Christopher Columbus. Or it looks like they're in alphabetical order, so maybe he would be included in the list in alphabetical order.
I like the including in alphabetical order, and for the record, the second was by Ray Smith, not Ray Lewis.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chad, and I'm sorry, Ray. And I'm also sorry, Mr. Lewis, that there is a Ray Lewis out there somewhere who just got dragged into our meeting.
It doesn't matter. That's okay. I just thought I'd bring a little levity into this discussion.
Thank you. Sorry, Ray. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and we have the standard as it is with the proposed addition. Is there any further discussion, or shall we vote?
Catherine, can you just make a note, Catherine Johnson? The overview of that module needs to be updated, I believe.
Yes,
The
if this,
currently-
So just to
if-
make a note, I know we're not voting on it, but I just want.
Yes, if this motion gets approved, we will make sure that the module overview is appropriate to the revised standard.
I mean, I think it makes
Okay,
sense
thank you.
because I mean, when you look at the explorers, they meant like Cartier didn't explore in what is quote the United States either. So, I mean, you know, so I guess maybe we need to look at changing the overview as well, so that that's not
I agree.
confusing.
I agree. I think the confusion is most of the module is referring to North America, and the focus seems to be on the, north of where Columbus was, but I think we can change it to include a broader region.
Okay, Catherine, can we move to a roll call vote for the addition of Christopher Columbus to standard 3.04?
Yes. Leah Barch,
So just want to make sure I'm voting on the right thing. We are saying that this is, do you support adding Christopher Columbus? Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
Aye.
Ashley Flood,
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin,
Yes.
Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines,
Yes.
Lori Cardoza Moore,
Yes.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
Yes.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries.
And
So,
you, just to confirm, you as a committee have previously given the state board authority to update overviews as necessary to reflect revised standards. So we will make sure that happens.
thank you. Laurie, can we go back then to your next point in the email?
Yes, Madam, thank you. So number 2, in the proposed 3rd grade standards, there was a standard about women and the American Revolution, proposed standard 3.21, that deleted Betsy Ross. I don't think this was the intention of the committee. I'm aware that Betsy Ross may or may not have created the first American flag, but I do think she's an important part of American culture, and I wanted the committee to be aware she was being deleted. And so I would like to provide this open for discussion if anybody else has concerns, but I would like to make the motion that we add her back in.
So the current 3.21, as per our work, reads, evaluate the contributions made by women during the American Revolution, including, there's a bulleted list, Abigail Adams, Deborah Sampson, Mary Ludwig Hayes, in parentheses, Molly Pitcher, and Phyllis Wheatley. So the motion is to add or reintroduce Betsy Ross to that standard.
This is Ray Smith. I
Madam
second.
Chair, can I?
Go ahead, Ray.
Ray Smith wants to second the motion.
Okay, thank you. I think that was Brian maybe speaking.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt the motion. I wanted to make a point of clarity for why she was originally removed. I actually support putting her back in. The reason she was originally removed was a very long letter that Bill sent to the committee asking that she originally be removed. So it's interesting that he's had this change of heart. I worry that he's going to have further changes of heart in the future. But I do actually support Betsy Ross being added back in. I'm just kind of amused that Bill has played both sides of this issue at this point.
Ashley, did we have any conversation or notes from when we discussed this previously? Did we discuss this standard at length previously?
We have. In the notes that I took, we did not discuss this standard specifically. I don't think we noticed that it had been removed because I don't have any record of us having a conversation.
Yes, the letter Brian is referring was sent to the educator advisory teams from Mr. Carey, and that is when, at the recommendation of Mr. Carey to the educator advisory teams, Betsy Ross was removed.
Interesting.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready to move forward with a vote? The vote would be if you are voting yes, you are in favor of adding Betsy Ross to standard 3.21.
Leah Barch,
Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
Aye.
Ashley Flood,
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin,
Yes.
Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines, Lori Cardoza Moore,
Yes.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
Yes.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 ayes.
Motion carries. Okay, there's a third point in. Oh, Laurie, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Number 3, in the proposed 5th grade standards, standard 5.07 describes Emory Road as the first road in Tennessee. I researched this and read everything that the late Tennessee Tech professor Calvin Dickinson wrote about this. The Emory Road was, in fact, a very early road, but as I understand it, it is inaccurate to label it the first road in Tennessee. However, it is a great idea to do a standard about early roads because the stories about how dangerous and wild these roads were are great stories. Also, the Natchez Trace needs to be mentioned in 5th grade. So what I recommend instead is the standard being reworded, quote, describe the founding of the Cumberland settlements, the creation of early roads, such as the Natchez Trace, and the roads across the Cumberland Plateau, and the obstacles faced with their establishment, including the Battle of the Bluffs, close quote.
I need to disclose something to this group right now. I'm the one that has written in the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture that the Emory Road, spelled with an E, not an O, was the first road in what is now Tennessee. I still contend that to be the fact, but I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion because it is specifically about something that I created. And I don't know any other way to handle this appropriately. Bill and I are talking about this, and I agree that there were other roads. He wants to call Indian Trails roads, and I don't. But I can't be a part of this discussion other than what I've just said. Is that handling it right? And I'm asking for legal advice as to what I need to do.
Mr. Lewis, this is Angie Sanders. I think you essentially have 2 options here because you don't have any sort of financial interest in the result of voting to include it or not include it. Then you can either, because you've disclosed it, say, I've disclosed it, but I feel I can vote in an impartial manner and continue to vote on it. If you don't feel that you can, then you can recuse yourself.
My name is Smith, not Lewis.
Oh, sorry. Mr.
Right, you mean
Smith,
you didn't play
see,
for the
we're
Baltimore
just gonna
Ravens?
keep this going. Sorry about that.
We're determined to make you a linebacker today.
Yeah. I'm perfectly happy to continue to discuss and to share and to vote, only if the remainder of the committee agrees that they want me to participate. I do not want to insert myself if even one member of this committee would be offended by me being a part of this discussion. How do I get that done to get the opinion of the rest of the committee?
Does anyone have objection to Mr. Smith?
I have no objection because Ray's here. He's a historian. He's credentialed. We know that, he's talking about Emory Road spelled E-M-E-R-Y. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what Bill has requested then for us to do with regards to Emory Road, that's inaccurate.
He would argue with you that it's been spelled both ways, and I understand that. It is, I mean, when you get to talking about these roads, you talk about the Avery Trace, it was all roads claim it, that, and Kent. Yeah, but there were multiple roads coming through the area. I'm okay with what Bill wants to do. I really do want the Natchez Trace included, but I want EMERY Road included too. So if you all let me continue, I'm going to make a motion to do what Bill suggests, with the exception of adding the Emery Road and other roads across the Cumberland Plateau. So that, if you all are going to let me participate, that's going to be my motion.
This is Jeff Cobble, and Ray, let me say I'm happy to have you participate. I don't consider there to be any breach. Again, you've disclosed, and I think that's appropriate, and I agree with the prior comments. You don't have any financial interest in this. Our only interest is to try to get history right as best we can. Yeah. And further from that point, I'll just say, how many times have we had to retract scientific theories and historical theories and so forth? So why don't we just couch our language by saying that that there's why don't we present both arguments, or that some have suggested that it's the first road without making it dogmatic, so to speak, and maybe that's a possible solution.
Thank you. I understand and agree. I am not hard over on the word first.
So it sounds as if, it sounds as if no one has objection to Ray participating, and thank you for disclosing you do not have financial interest, whereas Mr. Carey definitely does have financial interest. So if I think Ray made a motion, can I restate it and you see if that's accurate with your preference? Describe the founding of the Cumberland. This is going to be a combination, I suppose, of the recommendation plus your input. Describe the founding of the Cumberland settlements, the creation of early roads such as the Natchez Trace and the Emery Road across the Cumberland Plateau. Does the Emery Road cross the Cumberland Plateau?
That's correct. I would like that.
And to finish that, and the obstacles faced with their establishment, including the Battle of the Bluffs.
And I'm fine with that.
Would it be helpful for someone, and I can do it if you want me to put it in the chat so that we can all see the wording? Is that possible?
That'd be great.
Okay.
And this is Jeff Cobble. Let me just interject again. Someone had suggested previously that maybe we could, that I could get a copy. I was not included. I'm not suggesting any impropriety, but I just got left out. I've not seen the actual letter. It might be helpful if I could see that. Could someone email that to me?
Can you just send it to everybody?
I can.
Jeff, I can forward that to you
really quickly so that he has it quickly. And yeah,
I've copy and pasted Bill's suggestion into the chat, but before I send it, what was the modification, or where exactly were we putting the Emery Road in there?
We will put it after the Natchez Trace, Emery Road. I don't know if you need that.
E.
The Emery Road with an E, and other roads across the Cumberland Plateau.
Okay. And other roads across Cumberland Plateau. And then the rest of it stays the same, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I'm putting that in the chat, and hopefully that reads.
Yeah, you just make a capital on the word road. Emery Road was the name of it.
Okay. Capitalize the road. Okay.
We have a second.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith's motion.
I'll second that, Chad Lewis.
Any further discussion?
Not Chad Smith, Chad
Lewis. Just for clarification. We're just completely swapping 5.7 with this, correct? Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I understood. Okay, awesome.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote, unless there's any further discussion. But Catherine, could you lead us in a roll call vote to accept 5.07 as it reads as we discussed and as it reads in the chat?
Yes. Leah Barch?
Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
Aye.
Ashley Flood,
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin, Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines,
Yes.
Lori Cardoza Moore,
Yes.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
Yes, if I can get myself unmuted.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 ayes.
Okay, motion.
And I just want to confirm, Becca Reed, you have copied down the new standard. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, there was one more point. Laurie, we'll go back to you if you'll read for us. Thanks. Oh, it's muted again. So sorry.
Sorry. In the proposed 8th grade standards, when teachers cover the Constitution of 1834, the current and proposed standards instruct teachers to, quote, identify that the Tennessee Constitution of 1834 expanded voting rights for non-property owners, close quote. This is true. However, there were other parts of the Constitution of 1834 that need to be mentioned. For instance, the Tennessee Constitution of 1834 took away the right to vote from free Black men who previously were voting. In fact, he just wrote a column about this, and he provided the link for those who received his document. You can read it there. So I'm open to discussion. I think, again, the key is making sure that we get history right here. And I think this is an important part of our history.
There's sorry, I was on mute myself. There's a little bit more to that. Would you care just to finish off? Because the whole rest of what he sent is all pertaining to that.
Okay.
Suggested. Yeah.
The Tennessee Constitution of 1834 said the Tennessee General Assembly has, quote, no power to pass laws for the emancipation of slaves, close quote. So even if there had been support for freeing slaves in Tennessee in 1856, the state constitution forbid it. This, you see, is why the state constitution had to be amended by referendum in February of 1865. Bill goes on to say, my preference would be for the standard to say that teachers should teach, quote, the importance of the Tennessee Constitution of 1834, close quote. However, if the decision is made to provide more guidance, I would recommend the standard say this, quote, identify that the Tennessee Constitution of 1834 expanded voting rights for non-property owners, took away the right to vote from free Black men, and banned the General Assembly to pass laws emancipating slaves, close quote. That was his recommendation.
Katie, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to point out that what this standard is trying to do, the proposed standard that you've approved, is to give students a general understanding of what the Tennessee Constitution did in 1834. If we put every single thing that ever happened in history, this document's going to be way longer than 247 pages. And specifically, this standard right here is making a connection back to one of our most famous Tennesseans, Andrew Jackson, because it was as a result of Jacksonian democracy and Andrew Jackson's presidency that there was an expansion of voting rights. Now, specifically, that was to white males who weren't necessarily property owners, but that is where we're making the connection here. And as a former 8th grade teacher, the connection I would make with this standard is that Andrew Jackson helped propel us, and Tennessee passed their constitution, which was part of that Jacksonian democracy, with expanding the right of who could vote. Now, you would inherently also talk about that, yes, there are people that would no longer have the right to vote at many different places in this country, not just Tennessee, other states as well. But again, this standard is trying to, we can't put every single little thing. And so I think I know that was the original intention of the standard, to put the most important part, which is that connection to national history.
I also just want to clarify that the more detail you go, that this committee goes into in a standard, opens up possible subjects, topics that could be test items. So every time you call something additional out, that additional thing can become a tested item on state assessments.
Ashley, I think you were adding something maybe to the chat. Could you speak to that?
I just thought that it might be helpful to compare them side by side for anyone that was. I copy and pasted our currently taught 8th grade standard. That's the first item. And then below that, you'll see Bill's proposed revision to standard 48. Actually, I think in the document, what is currently proposed would be proposed standard 41. I'm trying to copy that from the red line document, but I'm having trouble using the copy paste option. I'll see if I can get that added.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Linda, were you trying to speak?
I was not, but I would be glad to make the motion that we adjust the standard, or that we. Okay, let me think about that before I make the motion, because I don't want to include so much that it does become part of the testing base.
Yeah.
Someone who's there may be better able to see the suggestion.
Yeah, didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought I heard that you were speaking. So we have, as is, identify this. I'm doing a side by side on 2 different screens. Currently, we're teaching identify the Constitution, Tennessee Constitution of 1834 expanded voting rights for non-property owners. We worked to update that to say identify changes to voting rights under the Tennessee Constitution of 1834, including the expansion of voting rights to non-property owners and the removal of voting rights for free African American men. So
I was able to get the red line version into the chat, so you can have all 3 in the chat for reference if that helps.
I'm not seeing I'm not seeing like a difference between Bill's proposal and the current one, really. Or maybe I'm just not looking at it. I mean, they're worded differently, but.
I believe the difference is on Bill's, it also adds and banned the General Assembly to pass laws emancipating slaves. Otherwise, they are very similar in context.
Yeah. I mean,
Madam Chair.
And I believe that Lori has her hand up.
Okay.
I would like to hear from the historians in the committee what their thoughts are with regards to how Bill has it worded, and even making the change to or keeping what's currently been approved.
I'll speak to what Bill has written. I see that he has added something that I think is historically significant. I don't know that I appreciate the point being made about it being put into tests. I understand anything that we write into a standard can be used in tests, and I'm okay with that. But I do think that the taking away the rights is important enough to be mentioned.
So just to clarify, the standard that you all, I'm just read it out loud so you all know. The standard that you passed at your meeting, it currently, so what you have sent currently to the State Board of Education reads, Standard 8.41, identify changes to voting rights under the Tennessee Constitution of 1834 including the expansion of voting rights to non-property owners and the removal of voting rights to free African American men. That is what the red line version you approved in August reads as. So your version does include and mention the removal of voting rights for free African American men.
So the key difference Bill is asking, and this is really up to the committee members, is there a motion to address ban the General Assembly to pass laws emancipating slaves? That's the only difference between what we have already submitted to the state or working on submitting to the state board.
Can I ask a point of clarity? I'm not super familiar with the exact wording of the Tennessee Constitution of 1834. Can we check on making sure that that wording is consistent with what it actually did? Because I seem to remember it outlawing the banning of slavery rather than the emancipation, but like I have not looked at that document in a long time. So I just want to make sure that before we write something into the standard, we have the official wording from the Constitution of 1834, if that makes sense.
Brian, it added language that required the approval of slave owners for the passage of any emancipation. Something like that. It basically said that slave owners had to have a part in emancipation.
I'm not sure. I think we're kind of in a pause of, do we see enough needed change to make a motion to change what we previously voted on, or are we leaving it as is with our proposed red line? Does anyone have a motion to make a change to what we've already voted on, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think to me, like the essence of the standard is dealing with voting rights specifically, and then it seems if you add the part about banning the General Assembly from passing laws emancipating slaves, you're kind of veering into other aspects of the Constitution of 1834. And then to Katie's point, if you go in that direction, then why would you not go another direction? You know what I'm saying? So like, are we just, is it necessary to branch off at that point? And if you do you need, are there other important things that need to be included? And again, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just putting that out there.
So I would ask a question, where is that fact included in our standards, if at all? Emancipating slaves.
We do have a standard about the emancipation of slaves.
Thank you.
Would you like from, let me find it real quick so I can give you the exact one.
No, I don't need you to find it. I just need to know that it is being covered and that it relates to the fact that it was in the Constitution.
Now, we have the 3/5 compromise. That's going to be where it's at in the Constitution originally. We have the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 that's going to ban slavery, which is the one that most teachers would talk about. We have a different idea of the cultures of enslaved people, Manifest Destiny, and then of course we have Fugitive Slave Act, Dred Scott, and then the Lincoln Douglas debates. And then I believe we also have the Emancipation Proclamation. So.
But you didn't specifically tie it to that particular Constitution.
The Tennessee Constitution of 1834?
Yes.
Yep.
Then
we have not, that is not something we have taught, no.
I understand. Thank you very much. And my motion would be to use Bill's words, if in fact they are accurate to what the Constitution actually said. And that's Ray Smith.
Is there a second?
Okay, move on.
Okay, don't hear a second. And that addresses all of the points in the email that we received. Is there anything else for the, Laurie? Yes.
Yes, I would like to open up the standards. I don't have the number, so if one of you can let us know where the Oslo peace accords are discussed. And I would like to make the recommendation that we include in that section of the standards the more current Abraham Accords, the U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital with the moving of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and also the recognition of the Golan Heights being part of Israel's territory.
Lori, so one of the things I remember us talking about in the that we discussed during the meeting was that we kept things contemporary, meaning we stopped at a certain time period. And so the Abraham Accords actually happened in around 2020. And so that's not something that's too contemporary. And so we tend to not go that far into history. So that's why I'm just telling you that I'm give you context as to why that wasn't included or why we didn't discuss that being included, because we don't actually move that far forward in history. And that's just a rule of thumb. We typically do 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that one isn't so before any other discussion, I just want to clarify that that's why that one wasn't specifically put in there.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
Okay, is there any formal motion or discussion on any other?
Lori, I do just want to verify, we do have the Oslo Accords in there though. If that, I know that Abraham was what you're talking about, but Oslo is in there. And
Right.
hopefully does that help some? I know that, I just.
Yeah, so Oslo, correct me if I'm wrong, was that 93?
Yes.
Let me,
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
Yes.
So,
90.
Yes.
So we're 20 years out. I just, by the time they get this in 2 more years, it's an important part of our history and what happened in the Middle East. So, but if there's a 20-year, if it's 20 years, then I'll keep it. I'll be satisfied with that.
Are there any other topics for discussion for our group?
Madam Chair, I want to bring something to the attention of the committee to correct an error that I had stated during our last meeting. When we talked about the Mayflower Compact, I mentioned it being included in government. It was in the current government standards. It actually was not in the proposed new government standards. So given that, I didn't know if the committee wanted to revisit the Mayflower Compact discussion because I wanted to make sure that y'all were operating with correct information.
Okay, so perhaps looking at current versus versus proposed and reintroducing the Mayflower Compact into our high school government and civics course.
Correct.
Okay. I'm scrolling to try to get to the government course so I can look at standards. I don't know if anybody has them handy. But yes, I do recall, and I do recall that right at the end on our last day as well, that came up.
And I apologize for the error. I just wanted to make sure we were operating in good faith.
Yep. Okay. I think
So is the government standard? And Brian, what was the number?
It's not in the proposed standards. It was
And
in
it is
the
not in the current
previous
standards either. No, it's not in the previous standards, Brian.
Okay,
It's
so it
not.
must have been in the 20.
And it's currently in our 8th grade
So-
standard now.
Correct.
Yeah, so
The
right
proposed,
now,
the proposed standards. Sorry. Are we suggesting it go with government standard number 4, where we look at the influence of past documents?
That's
Is
where I
that,
think it would
Brian?
make the most sense.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause, you know, the precedent for self-governance, you know, with the colonies, I think is a natural fit for it.
Yeah. So currently our proposed document would have standard 4 read, analyze the influence of past governments on the formation of the United States, such as Greek democracy, Roman Republic, and the Magna Carta.
Stephen Powell makes a motion that we add Mayflower Compact to that standard, please.
There a second?
Jeff Cobble will second. You may remember I was.
Ashley Flood will second.
Go ahead, Mr. Cobble.
I was just going to say, I'm happy to second it. You may recall, consistent with what Brian has stated, we need to remember that in our hemisphere, and perhaps in the history of the world, it's the finest example of social compact, and how it can be omitted from several different levels, in my opinion, I don't know how we can omit it. We ought to include it at least with American government, if not perhaps even in 8th grade or earlier. So I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to add Mayflower Compact to GC 04. Any discussion? Okay, Catherine, can we have a vote on that, please?
Yes, Leah Barch.
So this is to add it.
This is to add.
Yes.
Jeff Cobble,
Aye.
Ashley Flood,
Yes.
Jennifer Hamblin, Chad Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Moss Mines, Lori Cardoza Moore,
Yes.
Stephen Powell,
Yes.
Ray Smith,
Yes.
Catherine Schultz.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 8 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion or topics to share with the group? Laurie?
I just want to thank Brian for bringing that to our attention, because I think several of us had concern that we weren't teaching our kids about the Mayflower Compact, and now I will sleep better.
Good. All right. Thank you. I think that brings us to a conclusion. I know we've gone well past our allotted time on our agenda, so thank you all. Catherine, Nathan, Michael, anything else that you would recommend that we do, speak, or address before we adjourn?
Just some brief updates for your committee. First of all, thank you all for your continued hard work on this endeavor. I know we all want to make sure our students have the best possible standards as we continue forward. There will be a clean and finalized standards document ready on October 5th or 6th next week, which will be shared out to the state board members. At the same time, I will email it to you as well as add it to your Dropbox so that you guys have access to the finalized and cleaned document as well. And those standards will be on first reading with the state board at our November 3rd meeting. So if you have any questions about the rest of that process, feel free to email me, but I just wanted to provide you with those updates.
Thank you.
This is Jeff Cobble. I'll just ask if it could be emailed as opposed to Dropbox. Sometimes I have difficulty with navigating the Dropbox with regard to connectivity and things like that, but emails always come through. So if it's not a problem for it to be emailed,
Yes.
that's a preference for me.
I'll email it and add it to the Dropbox so that people have it in both locations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, do we need a formal motion to adjourn? Do we have a, nope. Okay, Nathan says no. That means we're good. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, and I have a great afternoon and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.